Hello, welcome. Glad to see you. So I saw this video pop up that caught my eye. Why does everyone suddenly have ADHD from fans? So it's a great channel. I recommend it. Links in the description. I got one of his other video suggested to me, and I kind of forgot about his channel, and I saw this one. And to give a bit of perspective of why I'm doing this, when I saw this, I felt it could be a good opportunity to watch this and share my thoughts about this because, well, I'm a VTuber, if that's not obvious, and I do occasionally myself watch other VTubers, sorry, and you probably noticed, but the subject of ADHD is comes very often. Like you can see many VTubers talk about ADHD or having themselves ADHD or having ADHD in all caps in the title or in the tags. So many VTubers have the ADHD tags in the description. It's almost like a requirement to be a VTuber to say, to proclaim that you have ADHD. And me, to be honest, I don't know much about the subject. So that's why I want to learn more by watching this video, because the title it echoes what I'm thinking as well. Why do I see ADHD talked about everywhere? I think that will be interesting for you to have to hear what I can say about this, since I'm completely new to the subject. So I'm discovering this for the first time, actually, like digging deep and trying to gather knowledge on the subject. So let's see.
Between 2007 and 2016, ADHD rates have increased by 123% in adults. The rates of ADHD prescriptions have gone up by 30% just from 2020 to 2022.
Oh, wow.
And this problem is getting so extreme that multiple countries have actually reported shortages in medication. And
that much?
To be honest, if you spend 15 minutes on the internet, you'll either find a video that tries to convince you that
yes,
you've got ADHD,
that's what I was talking about.
A video that feels like it's trying to give you
so much content about
so it can feel like
having
maybe
ADHD.
Everyone has ADHD today, but I do want to investigate.
And also, quick note, I don't mean any disrespect to anyone facing this issue, because I'm aware this is a disorder, but know that I'm completely unaware of the subject. And maybe the only thing I think about it, I have the feeling that it's almost becoming like a trend, like to have ADHD, and I have a feeling it's a detriment to those who really suffer from it. I'm not saying that those who proclaim it doesn't suffer from it, but I feel it's lowering the seriousness of the subject, if that makes sense.
This because there are some great successes that we've made in the last few decades, but also some areas of concern, some things that worry me, and some things that you should probably be aware of. First of all, I mean, we need to start with what is ADHD? Depends
yes.
who you ask, right? We've known about ADHD-like symptoms for hundreds of years, but I think a useful place to start is 1902 with Dr. George Still, who
way
was
back.
a really famous pediatrician. He described ADHD symptoms as a morbid defect of moral control.
Oh, what? Oh, that seems really harsh. A morbid defect? Okay, wait, what? Calm down.
So extra. Not exactly the most
yes, this is extra.
But if we fast forward to
first time saying this,
ADHD became like an official term in this book. the DSM. The DSM is like the book that psychologists and psychiatrists use to diagnose people. And in the third version, it was officially defined. It's since gone through 2 more updates, and each of these have progressively changed how we understand ADHD. Today, it's divided into 3 different subtypes, 3 different presentations: the inattentive kind, the impulsive kind, and a combination. So this is obviously, not medical advice. You should actually see a doctor if you want medical advice.
Yeah.
But these are a few of the symptoms of ADHD. Has difficulty sustaining attention to tasks or play activity, is easily distracted by extraneous stimuli, is forgetful in daily activities.
This I heard about, like in streams, like streamer people getting easily distracted.
Talks excessively, blurts out an answer before a question has been completed, or avoids, dislikes, or is reluctant to engage in tasks that require sustained mental effort. All of which are, somewhat relatable. And herein is where we have our first problem, right? Because simply having these symptoms doesn't mean that you have ADHD. Typically, you need to also have an actual assessment by a medical professional who can tell you.
Yeah, because also I felt that many people self-diagnose. Like they saw people talking about it and they self-diagnose. You should always see
these technology startups
a professional.
Promising to be able to do that in just under half an hour. However, the promise that they make is actually not great. And you'll see quite quickly that these guys are like the poster child for everything wrong with ADHD treatment at the moment. If there's one thing we know about technology companies, is that they have the public's best health interests at heart. I just want to talk to you about this company, Cerebral. This company has actually been valued at around $4.8 billion. They've also been sued by their own vice president of engineering, who alleged that the CEO was tracking whether giving people stimulant medication would keep them as loyal customers. This is crazy. This is a direct quote from this lawsuit. When Cerebral determined that the patients who were prescribed stimulants were more likely to remain customers, the CEO
making profit out of people buying your medication
to more ADHD patients to increase retention. Unsurprisingly, this same company was also fined $7 million over careless privacy violations, which means that they were selling patient data to advertisers. Dunn Health, another virtual prescriber, has been in similar trouble. The founder and CEO has been arrested and is on trial with the Department of Justice in the USA. So this is another quote from this lawsuit that was filed by the American government. The CEO and president allegedly obtained subscribers by targeting drug seekers and spending tens of millions of dollars on deceptive advertisements on social media networks. They also allegedly intentionally structured their platform to facilitate access to Adderall and other stimulants, including by limiting the information available to the prescribers, instructing their prescribers to prescribe Adderall and other stimulants, even if the member didn't qualify, and mandating that the initial encounters would be under 30 minutes. Interestingly enough, you'll see that if...
Yeah, I was waiting for this statement. Actually, I wanted to say something before, but I was thinking to myself, maybe I'm being too cynical. Like I should not assume the worst out of people, but maybe I should, because I was thinking maybe quote unquote big pharma is like riding this wave in order to make profit, basically. Like we just read in the statement, like using social media and advertising to tell people, do you have ADHD? Yeah, you have ADHD. You should take medicine. So maybe there's a huge part of people that are caught into this and they buy into it, and they start to buy medication when maybe they didn't need to in the first place. So everything to make a profit.
Virtual health appointments are carried out by actual hospitals, then they don't have the same problem of overprescribing medication. It's purely a problem with tech startups that masquerade as healthcare companies. But ADHD rates have been rising for long before this. It's been a trend for several decades, whereas these companies have simply arisen in the last few years. And
so what is the cause?
This question from a few different other angles, we get a conclusion that feels a lot more comprehensive and that reveals a lot of big positives actually in this space. It's really important to consider the gender dynamic, because the reality is women are still today far less likely to be diagnosed than men. Currently, the ratio is 2-1. And yet there seems to not be too much evidence that there's actually a biological difference that predisposes men towards ADHD than women. And if we look at what, researchers say about this, we find that there's a really big problem in how we've actually researched ADHD over the last few decades. This is Dr. Kathleen Nadeau, the director of the Chesapeake Center on ADHD Learning and Behavioral Health. And she talks at length about the history of ADHD research and the changes that have happened pretty significantly over the last few decades. She says that historically, research on ADHD has focused almost exclusively on hyperactive little boys. And only in the past 6 or 7 years has any research focused on adult ADHD. And this kind of tracks a lot with what we think of as the general perception or the general stereotype of what ADHD looks like.
Maybe, maybe because little boys are more likely to have the type of ADHD making them like hyperactive, like physically hyperactive, and maybe little girl have the other manifestation we saw at the beginning. So yeah, the lack of concentration, stuff like that, maybe.
The hyperactive little boy in a classroom. And this isn't just like a social stereotype. It's something that affects actual research. In clinical studies, the male to female ratio is actually around 4-1. So even if men are twice as likely to have ADHD in general, in actual research, men are even more overrepresented, which has had kind of like a self-reinforcing effect, right? This tracks with the fact that a lot of this rise is especially amongst women. The percentage of newly diagnosed between 23 to 49 has nearly doubled just between 2020 and 2022. So a few days ago, I made a community post asking members of the community what their experience was getting diagnosed. And I just copied one comment from Ruth, who described her experience. And she says that I got diagnosed at 24. It took me 3 years of seeking help and failing college to finally get diagnosed, because the nurse practitioner was refusing to believe me. She kept telling me that I just had childhood trauma and depression, as if I can't have those things, and ADHD. Eventually, I had to seek out someone else and pay out of pocket to get diagnosed. I fit the
That's so
diagnosis
weird.
of inattentive ADHD almost completely, but I think it was missed because I never caused any problems at school as a kid, and my parents didn't know enough or care. I'm not on any medications at the moment, but I'm hoping to within the next couple of months. We've had this huge problem for decades where certain groups have simply been ignored by medicine effectively. One of those groups is just women in general, who are more likely to have the inattentive kind of ADHD. The education system is really bad at spotting inattentive ADHD or ADHD in people
That's
who are
actually that's what I just said. Maybe the little boys have more of the hyperactive side of ADHD, and the little girls have more the inattentive type of ADHD, and it's harder to spot, like you
more
said.
intelligent, because it's less likely to be a problem when they're younger and much more likely to be a problem once they're older. And we have a similar problem when we look at ethnic differences. So, for example, Black children in the US are historically 70% less likely to get a diagnosis, even though they seem to show symptoms at least a similar rate, if not more frequently. But there's also been some changes in our definition of ADHD, and it's been able to capture a lot of people who would have been otherwise missed out by doctors. So in 1994, the DSM-4 was published, and this was the guidebook for psychologists for almost 20 years. And one of the key conditions for being diagnosed is that symptoms needed to appear first before the age of 7 years old. And there are a few problems with this. Well, first of all, if symptoms need to appear before the age of 7, then it almost certainly needs to be a parent or a caregiver that first notices them, because I think the average person can't really remember
The threshold is too low.
at the age of 7. This meant that people who didn't have strong support systems at home or attentive teachers would be completely ignored. They physically couldn't be diagnosed with it. However, in 2013, almost 20 years later, this diagnostic manual was updated. The threshold for when symptoms need to first appear was increased to 12 years old. This is a really good change, because it means that people who might not have as strong a support system could still be diagnosed with ADHD, because a lot more of us remember our lives before the age of 12 than we do before the age of 7. This DSM-5 also acknowledged the fact that ADHD could continue into adulthood. For a long time, it was simply believed that it was something you could grow out of, and the diagnostic manuals seem to kind of reinforce this idea. Some people learn coping strategies, some people learn masking techniques, but adult ADHD rates are rising much more quickly than childhood ADHD. And importantly, before 2013, it was actually impossible to be diagnosed with both.
Yeah, like I said in the beginning,
you had to have
if you take this in the lens of streaming and VTubing, it's the complete opposite.
Who have one have the other as well. There's a
People
very
are
strong chance that this rise
obvious and loud about it.
is something similar to the rise in the rate of left-handedness. Between the early and mid-1900s, nothing changed in human genetics, but there were simply some huge societal changes. It could be very possible that we're just actually bridging the gap between the actual percentage and the underreported percentage that we've had for all of human history thus far. But we do have to talk about the internet as well, because it is clearly affecting our minds. And it's clearly affecting our attention span.
I bet it's starter pack.
But yeah, is the internet giving us ADHD? Well, there is a link between ADHD and internet addiction. This is not a causal link, right? It doesn't say that ADHD causes internet addiction or that internet addiction causes ADHD. Simply that if you have one, you're more likely to have the other. It seems like there's very...
I'm kind of glad that they, like you said, that they at this conclusion, because like it's also people are talking about this also, like TikTok brain, like iPad kid, and I had this feeling that it's not helping. Definitely, it's not helping this culture of TikTok, of video, of instant gratification. It's not helping with people attention span. So yeah, I'm glad he's talking about
very little evidence to suggest that the internet is inducing ADHD. One of the problems with the internet, though, is that it can induce symptoms which can appear in anyone. If we go back to some of the symptoms, we can see that these are things that, to some extent, everyone struggles with, right? Everyone struggles at some point with attention, focus, yapping. But to suggest that the internet is giving people ADHD is different than suggesting that it's exacerbating the symptoms which appear in everyone. The real question we're asking here is, will people get better if they just stop using the internet? Whereas if you are a person who has ADHD, even not engaging with the internet will still not cure all of those symptoms. What ADHD shows is that the definitions are constantly changing. And so this feeling that everyone has ADHD is, categorically not true, because there are huge groups of the population that are still being left behind today and that don't have access to the treatment that they need. And where I personally have concerns is in the fact that we are letting technology companies fulfill the role that healthcare companies should be doing. I'm not anti-medication or anything. I just think that people should have access to the full spectrum of possible treatments that a qualified doctor who can give them the time and attention that they deserve would provide. In general, we have to accept that ADHD has been adopted into our vocabulary at large. And the difficulty is really you can't control how and when people use words. But more generally, I'm always going to pick the path that leads to more people talking about mental health, because that path is more inclusive and more likely to get people to actually investigate.
Wow, that's a very good outlook. Seeing it in a way to bring more discussion to mental health. That I agree. I fully agree. Oh, that's what's really interesting. Really interesting. Yeah, let's see some of the comments. And also, if you made it this far, thank you. And please share your thoughts in the comments. Mainly because on my question of why it is so, it feels overrepresented, people with ADHD in the VTuber space or streaming in general. So let's see. One thing to keep in mind when we come across stats or graphs suggesting that a diagnosis of X disorder have been increasing rapidly is to consider whether people are actually developing such disorder more often or whether the disorder is simply being better understood. That's true. The criteria for many psychological condition has drastically changed the last few decades alone. Yeah, that's something to consider. Maybe it's not that there's more people with ADHD, but in general, we grow a better understanding of it. So that's why it looks like an increase, but in fact, no, it's not. If there's one thing you need to know about ADHD, it should probably be this. Yes, everyone experiences the symptoms, but people start to seek serious help when the symptoms interfere with their lives. Makes sense. You can forget things and not have ADHD. You can have trouble focusing and not have ADHD, yeah. But when someone constantly forgets things and have so much trouble focusing that they can't even finish a school that is otherwise not difficult to them, then they need some extra help. Yeah, because he also mentioned this in the video. The symptoms, everyone goes through the symptoms, you having ADHD or not. The thing is when to know when you should seek help, because it's coming to a point where it's having a significant impact on your life. Yeah. Maybe last one, this one. I'm part of the statistics. A female diagnosed in their late 30s with inattentive type. I've always had ADHD and I've been searching for an answer for what was wrong with me my entire life. I was treated for anxiety and depression with little success. I was missed because I was quiet and intelligent, so I didn't struggle in school until college. Okay, so that's the same kind we talked about. So the other type, the type that goes unnoticed during school. Getting diagnosed changed my life though. My anxiety and depression were actually just symptoms of ADHD, and now that I have told for that I've mostly cleared up to, I think the reason why suddenly everyone has ADHD is because this population that was missed is now telling everyone because they don't want other people to stay missed. It's still 5 to 9% of people though, and even with the increase in diagnosis, it's not everyone. Yes, completely. Yeah. See, that's overall. I think it answer my question I had in the beginning. Yeah, it's the increase of understanding, and also the internet and streaming permits us to share quickly. It make it seems like everyone has it. Okay, so that was interesting. So yes, great video by fads. Don't know the pronunciation, so the link will be in the description. And yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.